Great, thanks, Tim. And look, we're a listed company, so the typical disclaimers apply on this particular slide. We're a really relevant company at the moment. Our customers are all of these busy laboratories around the world doing COVID-19 testing at the moment. So that's kind of the space that we operate. Think labs within a hospital setting and private labs like your Sonic Healthcare, Helios, and the like. So they're our customers. And the space that we operate is clinical microbiology. Best example that I can give is that if one thinks they have a urinary tract infection, that urine specimen goes to a lab, it is put onto an agar plate. You see pictures of agar plates on the screen here. It's incubated, and following incubation, you have a microbiologist, a scientist, sit at a workbench, much like what's on the picture here, and they read and interpret the plate and put the results into the computer system. So it's a growing industry, about 2.4 billion plates per annum kind of go through this workflow. And it's a very manual exercise and a very manual workflow. And it's the culture plate reading part of the workflow is the key activity that we've been able to automate. Next slide, please. And this is how we've been able to do it. We've been developing the core technology for 10 years. So it's been a really long journey for us, and it's taken a long time because it's really difficult to bring new technologies to market. So we automate the culture plate reading, and importantly, we make a clinical diagnosis. So some of the challenges that we've had to go through and the body of work to go through is proving the technology works, demonstrating that our accuracy is that at least equivalent than that of a human or of a scientist. And so we've done the clinical trials. We've done 10,000 patient clinical trials. We've gone through the regulatory hurdles and the regulatory barriers in that process to get a de novo clearance in the US FDA as a class 2 medical device. There is no predicate, so we led the way in doing it. I should say there's no other direct competitor to our technology. So every lab around the world, you have a scientist reading a culture plate. There's no different technology that does what we do. So we are leading the way globally with this particular indication. There are many AI companies that identify points of interest and are truly kind of a bit of a buzzword. We started before it was a buzzword. We've got protection from a patent perspective around the algorithm itself. In fact, a portfolio of patents that cover the imaging, the calibration tools, lighting, and the algorithm, like I mentioned. The instrument you can see is on the right-hand side of the screen here. You load up the instrument with the plates on the left-hand side. You start a session using the interface in the middle, and then you walk away. And what the benefits for these labs are is that you don't have the scientist sitting at that workbench that you saw on that previous screen. You have an instrument which is doing that churn, doing all that hard work for you. So plates are moved through into the imaging station, an image is taken, the analysis module, which is the key kind of claim and the key element to the technology, reads, interprets the plate and makes a clinical diagnosis. And it removes all those plates with no significant work out of the workflow, meaning that there is no human, there is no scientist that has to look at those negative plates. And it just leaves the positive plates that need to be worked on for further antibiotic susceptibility testing. And that ranges from anywhere kind of 2% of plates up to kind of 10, 15% of plates. Next slide. Very recently, we had a very key milestone with respect to our global access and distribution model, which is the partnering agreement that we've got with Beckman Coulter. Beckman Coulter are a Danaher company, 11,000 odd people globally, been selling into labs for over 40 years. What we've been able to do with this particular relationship, focusing on Europe first, is strike a deal, a teaming arrangement where they're marketing and they're selling our APAS independence instrument to labs in the UK and in Germany, which were our launch markets. And they've also added France to that. We haven't been in France before, so that's a new market for us that through this agreement, they're opening up. Importantly, APAS independence sits within an existing portfolio of products within that culture plate workflow. So the plate streaking product that you can see there on the screen, the autoplaque, automates the start of that process, putting the specimen onto a plate. So then following incubation, now we have APAS, which fits really nicely in the middle, which automates the culture plate reading component. And then they've got products that also automate the identification and the antibiotic susceptibility testing as well. So it's a complementary product within their existing suite of products that they're selling into labs. Next slide. And that really complements the work that we've really been focused on over the last 12 to 18 months. And we've done a lot of that heavy lifting with respect to establishing a global footprint, and the agreements such as the one with Beckman Coulter allow us to start scaling this business from a sales and marketing perspective. But we have placements in key markets. So starting in the US, we put a salesperson on in January. We've sold an instrument to Hennepin County Health Center there in Minneapolis in June. Quite recently, we published some really fantastic results from Johns Hopkins University, or Johns Hopkins Hospital, which most people are familiar with. So that body of work and that research really demonstrates that the core technology works. Kind of in Europe, the agreement with Beckman Coulter expands our geographies into France. We recently shipped our first instrument into the UK. We've sold an instrument into Germany. We have a key opinion leader, in fact, who's got 2 of our instruments installed in their particular lab. Kind of coming back home to Australia, it's a much smaller market, but it's where we started and where our development all occurs here in Adelaide. We sold our first instrument globally to St Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne, and they're also a technology partner for us for further development of analysis modules. So I think the key here is that we have established this footprint, and that takes time. We have our key opinion leaders who's got publications in the market demonstrating the utility of the instrument. And with partnering agreements such as the one with Beckman Coulter, we now have some scale that it really is impossible for us to replicate. They've been in these labs for over 40 years. Everyone's heard of Beckman Coulter, but obviously the brand awareness around us and our technology isn't there. So that will really help us scale. Next slide. And this is the sales model. And so we've got a physical instrument, which is the APAS Independence instrument. And so that retails for $300,000 US. And then we have the software, the analysis modules, and they range from $20,000 to $40,000 US per annum. So that's your install-based revenue or your trailing revenue component of the model. So an upfront CapEx, and then you've got a recurring revenue, which is the software. You can't opt in or opt out of the software. Really, that's what does all of the analysis and really the intelligence of the instrument. The reason why there's a range in that price is because we have more than one analysis module. And so if you just have a urine module, well, then that's one price. If you have a urine plus an MRSA, that's another price. And so that's why we have a range of pricing with that particular element. So over a 5-year period, and typically the useful life of this instrument is 7 to 10 years. That's how labs look at the useful life. We always sell it typically on at least a 5-year contract. When labs make the purchasing decision, they want the support, they want to understand that up front, and they want to lock in over a 5-year period. So there is a large global market opportunity, over 2,000 labs in the initial launch markets that we're targeting. Next slide. COVID's a hot topic on everyone's mind, and what we've been able to do is really innovate the service delivery model at a time where it's really difficult to travel. And I think this is a really important aspect to how we've been able to continue to gain traction in our sales and marketing efforts while still being, kind of restricted from a sales perspective. We announced that we shipped our first instrument into the UK, into a very prestigious lab in London, the single largest lab in London. It's a Sonic lab, and we did it all remotely. Under normal circumstances, we would have flown our technician over, our scientist over to do all of the training, and we were able to do all of that remotely with a recently appointed local service group within the UK who received the instrument, installed it, and we're able to do all of that training remotely using conference tools such as this one. So it allows us to scale in a real blueprint for further delivery globally. Next slide. So as was mentioned, we did raise some money recently. This is off the back of the Beckman Coulter announcement. We raised money at 16 cents. Unfortunately, we've gone a little bit backwards from a share price perspective, but we've got over $15 million in the bank. So I think as we look at the outlook, we've got a lot of blue sky ahead of us. We have a long funding runway well into kind of 2022 and a lot of global growth opportunities. And so We've just established that agreement with Beckman Coulter, and obviously we're working, performing the training and getting the sales tools up and running with them. And we look forward over coming months to do joint sales visits to customers. So we expect that agreement to start generating some traction, starting that scaling process that I mentioned. And then shifting gears into the US, we'll look to appoint a similar type of organization in the US to start scaling that business. And of course, along the way, generating sales. So we see a really positive inflection point for the company, some great milestones that we've achieved over the recent couple of months, and the beginning of a scaling process to really transition this business into more meaningful sales over the future years ahead. So I'll pause it there and open up to questions.
Thanks, Brent. Great presentation. I've got a couple of questions here. In terms of the equipment that you sell, for want of a better word, what's the margin on such a big priced item?
Yeah, so it's around $90,000 is the cost of goods for the instrument. So these are initial kind of early run production units.
And is there a steady pipeline growing now in terms of sales and targets?
Yeah, so what we've done, the sales process is a long one. So it's about a 12-month sales cycle, kind of on roughly speaking. And so with our salesperson that we've got both in Europe and in the US, we've got a pipeline of opportunities. And it's really now with the agreements with Beckman that we can hand over that pipeline, work alongside them to really start getting into these labs and scaling.
And what are the kind of estimated cost savings for the actual buyers of this equipment, the hospitals?
Yeah, look, it is all about either reallocation of resources or reduction in resources. One of the interesting things is it's very difficult to find microbiologists. There's not enough coming through the university system. And so we have customers in particular on the East Coast of the US who don't have high volume, but just find it impossible to get microbiologists. And that's their driver to look at adopting the technology. But really this is a play at efficiency, looking at a quicker turnaround time of patient specimen samples, getting back to the doctor, as well as savings in labour.
And a question here about the Asian market, China, India. Is there any timeline for sales into that region? Yeah,
certainly China's on our horizon. It's not in our near-term horizon. Really, we've done some work in China, and there's a tiered hospital system up there, and they would need to have a sputum module because of the respiratory issues. And so we've kind of targeted more in the developed markets in the early launch phase, but certainly China's a big opportunity for us, look, as well as India, but the drivers are quite different with respect to those markets than they are for other markets.
And we're getting a lot of questions coming through here. In regards to IP, can you talk through the IP ownership of the equipment?
Yeah, so LBT own all of the IP, and I mentioned we've got a portfolio of 4 patents. It covers the imaging, the calibration tools, the lighting, as well as the algorithm itself. Very difficult to patent an algorithm. So we have coverage on our AI technology. And like I said, we started this in 2010 before everyone was doing AI. So it's proprietary to what we do.
Right. And one last question here. How accurate is the equipment compared to what was done previously?
Yeah, so the predicate, it's a really good one. So the predicate's a human, right? So part of our 10,000 patient clinical trial was having 3 blinded microbiologists look at 10,000 patient samples. We had to have 3 because they didn't always agree with each other, but 2 out of 3 would. So that became our truth statement that we then ran that same 10,000 plates through our APAS instrument and had over 99% sensitivity. And that formed the basis of getting our FDA clearance.